The morning came not with noise or announcement, but as a gentle unfolding. Light entered through the blinds in long, pale slats, cutting across the floor and wall in shapes that shifted imperceptibly as the sun rose. I lay in bed for a while, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of my body against the mattress. Limbs pressed lightly into the sheets, shoulders held tension evenly, chest carried its usual quiet pressure. I noticed each sensation fully, without labeling or judgment. Presence itself was enough. Memory surfaced, faint and irregular. Not a story, not a recollection with plot, but fragments. The smell of wet leaves after rain, the texture of a wooden chair I had once sat in for hours, the tilt of sunlight on a familiar wall years ago. These traces did not demand engagement. They were there, arriving without invitation, dissolving without effort. I observed them like shapes in peripheral vision, registering without grasping. Eventually, I rose. Movements were slow, deliberate, precise, though not forced. The body unfolded in a sequence I did not need to guide consciously. Feet met the floor. Hands found balance. Shoulders rolled. Spine extended. The small pressure in my chest, the familiar companion of presence, spread evenly, grounding the awareness that drifted between memory fragments and the immediate room. Coffee followed. I prepared it as usual. Water poured, beans ground, liquid poured into a cup. I did not anticipate flavor. I did not evaluate. When warmth reached my lips, I felt it fully. The texture, the weight, the faint bitterness. It was enough. I noticed the act itself, the coordination of muscles, the small movements of hands and arms, and the subtle balance of weight through my torso. Awareness threaded through each motion. Outside, the world carried its usual rhythm. Cars moved along predictable lines. Pedestrians walked, paused, shifted. Air carried faint scents of exhaust, damp concrete, and coffee from cafes that lined the streets. Sounds layered upon each other. A distant siren, the echo of shoes on pavement. A conversation fragment carried across space. All of it registered, fully present, without interpretation. Fatigue persisted in the chest and limbs, steady and even, absorbing external input without allowing it to fragment attention. Memory appeared again as I walked. A faint smell brought the recollection of a long-forgotten street, a path walked decades earlier, a house whose shape I could not name. I felt the texture of that memory in my body before my mind interpreted it. Legs shifted differently, the chest adjusted slightly, awareness widened subtly. There was no longing, no judgment, no story, just recognition of continuity. Past, present, and body converged quietly. I noticed people around me, not as individuals to engage with or categorize, but as part of the field of perception. A woman paused to adjust her bag. A man leaned against a railing, smoking. A child tripped and regained balance. I registered these details fully, as physical impressions rather than events requiring thought. Fatigue carried them with ease. Presence absorbed the subtle motions of others without interference. At work, tasks arrived as usual. Emails, short messages, practical questions. I responded minimally, directly, without internal rehearsal. The usual anticipatory tension that once accompanied communication had thinned. Interaction became functional, yet fully observed. Awareness threaded through each gesture, each word, each small exchange. Nothing lingered. Everything concluded upon arrival. By noon, I sat at the window again, observing light shifting across familiar surfaces. Shadows lengthened and shortened. Textures revealed themselves in subtle relief. Memory traces surfaced again. The smell of paper from a desk I had used years ago, the distant echo of a train platform I had forgotten, the temperature of a wooden floor under my bare feet. These fragments appeared without narrative, without longing. Observation alone sufficed. I walked during lunch. The city moved around me. Streets intersected. People flowed. The body recorded textures. Pressure under feet, wind against skin, sunlight falling unevenly across surfaces. Awareness threaded into each sensation, noting without judgment. Fatigue remained a constant ballast, grounding attention and allowing each impression to arrive fully, then dissolve. In the afternoon, a colleague asked a question. Simple, direct, practical. I answered with minimal effort. Internally, no commentary arose. No analysis, no anticipation, no judgment. The exchange existed as a field of interaction, passed through awareness, and concluded cleanly. Presence carried the interaction without exertion. Memory returned subtly as I moved through the afternoon, not as narrative, not as longing, not as story, but as tactile and sensory impressions. A particular tone of sunlight on a wall, the texture of paper, the faint smell of damp earth from the park. They arrived, registered, and faded. Past and present coexisted seamlessly, carried by the body and attention together. Evening arrived, gradually softening the light. I did not turn on lamps immediately. Shadows deepened, shapes blurred, the room softened. I sat on the floor, back pressed to the wall, legs extended. Breathing was slow, even deliberate. Fatigue, memory traces, and awareness coexisted seamlessly. Observation flowed naturally, continuous, and unbroken. There was no need for interpretation. There was no need for narrative. Presence itself was enough. Dinner was simple. Taste arrived fully. Each texture, temperature, and aroma registered without reflection or evaluation. Awareness threaded through each motion, from the hand, lifting the fork to the body, shifting in chair, to the subtle pressure of the feet against the floor. Memory fragments surfaced faintly, moments from years past, but left no trace of longing or judgment. They were there, acknowledged and gone. Later, I lay down. Sleep arrived as a continuum. Presence remained in the body and mind, threading through rest, through dreams, through faint recollections. Consciousness persisted gently. Fatigue carried awareness, and awareness carried attention, and attention carried the body. The night passed without urgency, without expectation, without narrative. By morning, the rhythm continued. Fatigue, awareness, memory fragments, observation, presence, all coexisted seamlessly. Life moved around me without demand. I moved with it without interference. Each breath, each step, each subtle adjustment of posture was fully present, fully acknowledged, fully integrated. Presence itself became the medium of life. There was no drama, no revelation, no resolution, only quiet continuity. And in that quiet, enduring flow, I existed fully, threading awareness through body, memory, and world. The morning was slow. Light entered through the blinds at an angle I had not noticed before, faintly warming the floor and the walls. I lay for a while, observing the subtle vibration of air in the room, the faint tension in my limbs, the low, steady pressure in my chest. The body registered everything: weight, texture, temperature, small shifts in alignment. Fatigue was not weakness. It was ballast. Presence was both structure and medium. Memory surfaced in fragments. Not stories, not past events, not longing, but traces. The texture of a worn wooden handrail, the smell of wet leaves on a forgotten path, the angle of light on a table years ago. Each fragment appeared, lingered for a moment in awareness, then dissolved. They arrived without demand, without narrative, without interpretation. I did not reach for them. They came. Eventually, I rose. Movements were deliberate yet fluid. Feet met the floor, shoulders rolled, spine extended. Each action unfolded naturally, without interference from thought or expectation. Coffee was prepared slowly, deliberately. I noticed the warmth of the cup in my hands, the faint bitterness as I drank, the small tremor of heat along my lips. Awareness threaded through each motion without analysis. Each sensation existed fully, and then it passed. Walking outside, the city carried itself in its usual rhythm. Vehicles moved along predictable lines. Pedestrians adjusted, paused, flowed through space. The body recorded textures, pressure under feet, subtle shifts in weight, temperature changes, sounds layered at different distances. Fatigue remained as steady ballast, allowing awareness to thread through each sensation without interference. Memory fragments arose intermittently, a smell, a sound, a fleeting texture, perhaps from years before. They were noted and released without engagement. Mid-morning brought a colleague's brief question. Simple, practical. I answered minimally, without internal commentary. In the past, such moments would have left tension, replay, anticipation. Now the exchange arrived, existed, and concluded cleanly. Presence carried the interaction naturally. There was no residue, no replay, no emotional trace left behind. At lunch, I sat in the shared space with others. Their conversations overlapped, voices rising and falling like distant waves. Gestures, laughter, brief exchanges, all registered, fully perceived, yet I did not participate beyond necessary gestures, shifting weight, lifting utensils, acknowledging proximity. The body absorbed these interactions with ease. Awareness threaded naturally through sensory input and subtle social contact. Social presence was now texture, not event. Fatigue carried it evenly. Walking afterward, memory appeared again. Not as story, not as longing, but as sensory fragments. The tilt of sunlight through a tree, the texture of gravel underfoot, the faint smell of damp earth from earlier rain. Each impression registered in the body first, shaping movement subtly. Awareness extended to the environment without interference. Past and present coexisted quietly, carried seamlessly by the body. Later, a neighbor passed in the hallway. A simple greeting. The usual micro-adjustments of posture and tone registered. I responded, minimally, acknowledging presence, and continued without replay. Each social interaction was absorbed fully and completed cleanly. Observation now existed as a quiet structure, integrated with bodily awareness. By late afternoon, fatigue deepened slightly, not as burden, but as steadying force. Each step, each breath, each small movement required attention, but attention now carried itself naturally. The rhythm of body, memory, and perception coalesced, forming a continuous thread through which the world could be experienced fully without strain. I paused on the balcony. Air brushed against skin, carrying the scent of city and vegetation. Light shifted slowly, brushing across surfaces. Shadows lengthened, softened, dissolved. Awareness threaded through the sensations. Warmth, pressure, movement, texture. Memory fragments appeared faintly. Sound of a train, the angle of light on a wall, a distant voice. But they were noted and passed without attachment. Presence carried them without needing to interpret or narrate. Evening arrived quietly. I did not immediately turn on lights. Shadows deepened, shapes softened. I sat on the floor, back pressed against the wall, legs extended, hands resting lightly. Breath threaded through the body, connecting chest, shoulders, spine, and limbs. Awareness remained continuous. Fatigue remained steady. Observation persisted. Social contact, sensory perception, and bodily presence existed as a seamless field. Dinner was simple. Taste, texture, temperature registered fully. Memory fragments surfaced briefly. A smell, a sound, a tactile impression, but without narrative, without longing. Awareness remained unbroken. Fatigue, observation, and presence coexisted. Later, I lay down. Sleep arrived gradually. Consciousness threaded between wakefulness, dreams, and presence. The body maintained attention naturally, carrying fatigue, memory, and awareness together. The night passed without urgency, without narrative, without interference. By morning, the continuity persisted. Life unfolded without drama. Tasks, movement, social contact, all occurred within the same seamless thread. Presence itself had become sufficient. Fatigue was infrastructure. Memory was texture. Awareness was medium. Observation flowed naturally, threading each experience into an unbroken field of being. Nothing dramatic occurred. Nothing required urgency. No resolution arrived. Yet the rhythm, the continuous presence, the integration of body, memory, and awareness, all became self-sustaining. Life moved quietly around me, and I moved with it, neither shaping nor resisting. Presence itself was enough. And in that quiet, ongoing field, I existed fully, threading awareness through body, memory, and world, carrying fatigue without resistance, observing without narrative, and inhabiting life in its continuous, subtle, unremarkable flow. Morning arrived softly, unannounced. Light stretched through the blinds in quiet lines, illuminating dust particles suspended in the air. I lay still, sensing the weight of my body against the mattress, the familiar pressure in my chest, the subtle tension along my spine. Limbs held slight warmth. My hands rested easily, feet pressed against the floor when I finally moved. Awareness threaded through every sensation, steady, unbroken. Memory surfaced faintly, as if brushing against my mind without requiring engagement. The scent of rain on asphalt from years ago, the texture of a worn wooden chair in a classroom I could no longer place, the angle of sunlight across a wall I once knew. These fragments appeared, registered, and faded. There was no longing, no interpretation, just acknowledgement. Presence itself held them. I rose slowly, body unfolding with deliberate precision. Feet found the floor. Shoulders rolled. Spine extended. Each movement occurred without interference from thought. Coffee was prepared quietly, the warmth of the cup in my hands grounding attention. Taste arrived fully, the bitterness, the weight, the subtle warmth traveling from lips to chest. Awareness threaded through each sensation, unbroken, unjudged. Outside, the city moved as always. Cars passed predictably, pedestrians shifted, paused, flowed. Noise arrived in layers, distant, mid-range, immediate. Each impression registered fully, threading seamlessly through the steady ballast of fatigue that carried attention without effort. Memory flickered intermittently. The smell of a bakery from a street decades ago, the distant echo of a train platform, the subtle weight of a floor under bare feet. Past and present coexisted quietly, carried through body and awareness. Interactions with people occurred as texture rather than event. A neighbor nodded in passing. A colleague asked a simple question. Words were exchanged, gestures acknowledged, and the moment concluded cleanly. In the past, each interaction would leave residue, replay, tension, anticipation. Now, conversation was absorbed into the ongoing field of awareness, leaving nothing behind. Social presence was subtle, functional, integrated into the rhythm of perception. By mid-afternoon, fatigue deepened slightly, not as burden, but as foundation. Each movement, each shift in posture, each breath carried weight. Observation threaded through body and environment, integrating sensation, memory fragments, and social presence seamlessly. I paused in the park, leaning lightly against a railing, absorbing light, air, sound. Leaves rustled. Sunlight dappled the path. A distant voice floated by, all registered fully. Past traces, memory fragments of similar places, similar sensations, surfaced but required no attention beyond acknowledgement. Evening softened the world. I did not turn on lights immediately. Shadows deepened, edges blurred, shapes dissolved subtly. I sat on the floor, back resting against the wall, legs extended, hands relaxed. Breathing threaded through body, attention expanding naturally. Fatigue, awareness, memory fragments, and social presence all coexisted seamlessly. Observation became continuous, unbroken, unforced. Dinner was quiet, deliberate. Taste arrived fully. Texture, temperature, aroma registered without analysis. Awareness extended into each movement. Hand lifting fork, body shifting weight, feet pressing lightly against the floor. Memory appeared faintly. Smell, sound, tactile impressions. But they were acknowledged without narrative, without attachment, without longing. Presence carried everything effortlessly. Later, I lay down. Sleep arrived gradually. Consciousness threaded between wakefulness, dreaming, and full body awareness. Fatigue carried presence, Awareness threaded through memory fragments, and both carried attention without strain. The night passed quietly, continuously, seamlessly. No interruption, no narrative necessity, no drama. Just observation and presence. By morning, the rhythm persisted. Life moved around me without demand. Tasks, interactions, movement, all unfolded within a field of steady awareness. Fatigue remained as ballast. Memory fragments continued to surface intermittently, carrying texture without story. Awareness integrated it all, threading past and present into an ongoing continuum. Days continued in this rhythm. Walking through the city, observing the light, shadows, sound, and texture, social contact arriving and departing without friction. Everything was absorbed into the seamless field of presence. Each breath, each step, each subtle gesture of posture or glance existed fully within the ongoing flow. Awareness and fatigue no longer acted as separate entities, but as a combined medium for life itself. Memory, too, no longer demanded narrative. Fragments appeared as sensation, the angle of light, the sound of wind through leaves, the faint odor of damp concrete. They arrived, registered, and passed without expectation. Past and present coexisted evenly, threaded through the body, grounded in fatigue, carried by attention. Nothing pressed, nothing lingered, nothing needed to be controlled. Social interactions continued, brief and functional. Greetings, casual exchanges, shared spaces, each absorbed naturally into awareness. No tension remained. No replay occurred. Presence allowed participation without exertion. Attention threaded through the body, the environment, and social texture seamlessly. Fatigue supported it, providing stability rather than limitation. Evening deepened again. I did not turn on lights immediately. Shadows thickened, softened, dissolved. I sat on the floor, back resting against the wall, legs extended. Breath flowed naturally, threading through body and awareness. Memory fragments surfaced occasionally. The texture of a sidewalk long forgotten, a sound from years past, the angle of light on a distant wall. They arrived, registered, and faded. Observation continued uninterrupted. Dinner passed quietly. The body registered taste, texture, temperature, and subtle motion. Awareness remained continuous, integrating perception, fatigue, and memory seamlessly. Sleep arrived without announcement. Consciousness threaded through wakefulness, dreams, and bodily awareness. Fatigue and attention merged into a medium that carried presence effortlessly. By the following morning, continuity persisted. Life unfolded quietly, seamlessly. Memory, perception, social contact, and bodily awareness existed in an integrated field. Presence had become self-sustaining. Fatigue was ballast. Awareness threaded everything. Observation flowed naturally, unbroken, unobtrusive. Nothing dramatic occurred. No revelation. No urgent necessity. No narrative resolution. Yet the quiet, persistent, unremarkable flow became sufficient. Life moved. I moved with it. Awareness threaded through body, memory, and environment. Fatigue grounded attention. Observation carried presence. And in that unbroken, continuous, quiet rhythm, I existed fully, neither interpreting, anticipating, nor judging. Simply present, simply aware, simply enduring. Presence itself had become enough.